booties for black girl nerds.
I really enjoyed this. For one, it was very unique in the subject that it was telling and the way the story was told, kind of dark, a little, maybe it's sinister, maybe it's not. But on top of that, it explores so many important topics to women, like agency over your body, medical advice, kind of half given you, not fully hearing what you're saying. When you first got a chance to know Lucy, who she is, and shape who she is, what drew you to her and this story in particular?
So I co-wrote False Positive with my director, John Lee. And the experience from writing it to shooting it was very, very different. Writing it, we were like, oh yeah, here we go, here we go. It was exciting in this way. Shooting it was terrifying, terrifying to purposely embody a less free mind when my life, I really try to raise my consciousness about what the world is, how I fit into it. And I think of that as like freedom, real freedom, to be free and really human despite the system is like real freedom. To embody her on set was horror, it was a personal horror. But Jeandra, because you asked getting to know her, I'm thinking about the writing process, and your question is really making me think about the moment in which John Lee and I were writing these characters, Lucy and Adrian. Lucy's the star and Adrian's her husband, who's about 15 years older. And we were like distancing ourselves from them and judging them. And we were like, these like privileged white New Yorkers, and they don't realize that they're not as progressive as they think. We were keeping our distance from them, but there was this point in the rewrites getting closer to shooting in which John and I had to admit we are them. We are them, or we're connected to them. We're on a spectrum. And John's like 15 years older than me. I was like, dude, we are Lucy and Adrian. We're married in this project. And, this humbling moment of getting closer to Lucy and Adrian. And I don't think I could have performed her the way that I did had we not had that revelation to allow for closeness between ourselves and these characters. But it's ugly, we didn't want to be close to our own privilege, to our own ignorance. But once we were, it was like, then we could actually raise our own consciousness beyond where we had been prior.
Mm-hmm. What struck me most about your portrayal of Lucy is I like that kind of level of like just fear kind of just brimming beneath the surface. Even when things are good, as women, we're taught, oh, you do this naturally, it's nothing. You pop a few vitamins and that's it. And it's not like that for a lot of women. It's more challenging. So where did you search in yourself for that keep that fear just kind of brimming to do something that's supposedly so natural for us?
I think people see me as this fearless person because of how I portrayed Ilana Wexler in Broad City, but I live with a lot of fear that I put so much work in to try to soften and dissolve. And again, the idea between distance and closeness, I normally try to distance myself from that fear and gather the power and the strength to just do the things that I want to accomplish in this world. But it wasn't even really that hard. That fear is right there in me. It's right there and available. So I think actually just allowing it to come closer, it was already in me. It wasn't even like something I made up or had to reach too far down to get to. I myself will gaslight myself and be like, oh, I don't know what's going on. I don't know better. But it's this practice and this unlearning and relearning of a new way to trust oneself and to be able to hold both things, your instincts and what you're being told, and to consider them like equal value options.
Absolutely. Well, I thoroughly enjoyed this. It doesn't get talked about enough, and your performance was wonderful. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Jeandra. Appreciate you.
Take care. To you too. It is such a pleasure and honor. I've enjoyed your work for so many years, and
Thanks.
I'm super excited about this role that you're portraying as Dr. Hindle. I love you're just not quite sure of what's happening. He's been tasked to help this family with their fertility issues, but we aren't quite sure where he lies in the spectrum of who he is and his practice. There's something to people having complete trust in doctors. They're honorable people. It's an honorable profession, but there are some variances in there. What type of equality is it that a person has when they can attach themselves to people when they're most vulnerable, would you say, like he does with this family who wants to have a baby so desperately?
No, I think it's the ego, it's the grandiosity of a misspent, misplaced life force. Hindle is charming. I mean, when I read the script, I understood all the benchmarks of why I was being invited in to play this character. But, you know, he really does have a stiletto heart of corruption. And there are many of these doctors, fertility doctors. There have been many named over the course of many years who have abused their power and really mangled the lives of women and created a life that has left people marked and hurt and scarred for many, many years. So it's a horror story about a true horror story in our society. But as I say, there are the great men and women out there who bring the best of humanity to their work and do create wholesome lives for women who want to have children. But this character was a delight to play. There are moments in it, there are certain aspects that I've never played before on film. And I thought that was intriguing. You want to be an unexpected surprise as an actor as much as possible. And I very much enjoyed the work of Ilana and John Lee and their collaboration on this. I love the world of independent filmmaking and the strength and the courage it takes to make a movie on, you know, not a big budget and a time restraint. And so I'm very proud of the work that's been done by everyone on this film. It has an elegance. It's a disturbing film. But I think it has a strong sincerity of storytelling and surprises.
Absolutely. What made it even more intriguing, like you said, there are aspects that you haven't played before. You know, you've always been such a warm figure. People have enjoyed your performances, and to see you performing something contrary than supportive or warm or uplifting was very, very exciting to see. Has this changed your own knowledge of what happens in the medical industry, or were you acutely aware of a lot of this before?
Well, I was acutely aware, yes. Yes, my late wife passed away from ovarian cancer. And so the doctor who was taking care of her prior to it, she had problems with her cycle, and he just said, well, don't worry, one of your ovaries have dropped. So it's quite common. But by the time she got the real diagnosis, it was stage 4 cancer, ovarian cancer. So this man who is very, very known in the profession just didn't look close enough. So if he'd actually done his job properly, there might have been a life saved, but it was too late. So personally, yes, I have experienced that. And the original script named all these men who have been accused of just really the worst behavior that can happen to any woman. You know. And, they dropped that from the script now. But I was quite shocked to read about these cases of these doctors who abuse their power, and really a fabric of life that destroyed lives and created havoc within people's lives, women's lives, and their families. But anyway, that is not there in the movie now. The movie just has its own proscenium arch of storytelling, and it's, as I say, it's a horror story about really a true horror story that happens in society, has happened.
Absolutely. You are marvelous, and I truly enjoyed your performance and speaking with you. It's a tremendous honor, and thank you again for your time.
All the best. Good talking to you too.
Thank you. Thank you, Sophia. You look beautiful. Thank you for your time.
Hi, Jeandra. You look beautiful. You have like a whole rose moment happening that's so pretty, even behind you with your flowers.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. It was an accidental gift and it just kind of worked today.
Oh, I love it. I've been so excited about like seeing how everyone's popped up in the Zoom rooms today. It's been great.
Some people are really, really good at it. And you're looking great too.
Thank you.
With false positive, it really explores some very serious themes for women, including agency over body, questioning medical advice, whether if it's enough or too little. Your character CORGAN is part of this community of women who are taking their reproductive needs in their hands and visiting this doctor. Has there ever been an occasion for you where you felt like you're speaking against or questioning your doctor's abilities wasn't taken seriously? Or is this an experience that you've had in your own life, aside from OBGYN, but just in general, where you felt like what you are saying hasn't been respected or truly heard?
Well, I think that's something that is so upsetting to learn. For me, I often find, courage and purpose in advocating for us. And then often when I'm out learning about what happens for us, I see the points where I've experienced what I'm learning about in my own life. I'm able to have a sort of awareness about things that have happened to me that I've brushed off or been told were no big deal when in fact they are. And something that is so upsetting to me to understand is that even if we look at R&D in the medical world, only 3% of all research and development is allotted to women. We're 51% of the population. And medicines, treatments, even things like, heart healthy diets, they're not tested on us. And heart disease is the #1 killer of women. And to really dive into the medical field, the show that I have coming out on CBS this year is called Good Sam, and I play a heart surgeon. And so the last 2 years have been me diving completely into fertility for false positive and then completely into, cardiovascular health for my show. And it has made me furious for the way that women's pain is not taken seriously. And then when we look at the way that women are often dismissed, that their heart attacks are missed and they go home, to have fatal incidents, to understand what happens for us as women, and then to understand the more insidious experience that Black women go through. When you look at a movie like this and you understand that Black women have a 4x maternal mortality rate to white women, the entire system makes me feel furious. And it's why we wanted to interrogate it. And it's why it felt important for me to use my understanding as a human to then apply to this woman, this very privileged white woman in New York. All of her empowerment still is steeped in internalized misogyny. And her dear friend expresses that she's having fear about the agency over her body and her pregnancy. My character's first response in trying to check in with her is often, well, what did your husband say? And it's like, but he's not the pregnant one.
Right.
And it's those kinds of experiences, that kind of gaslighting that so many of us as women go, yep, I've had that. I've had a version of that. And so to find it, to hold a mirror up to myself, to investigate, where has my internalized misogyny lived? To hold a mirror up to our audiences and say, where does this happen to you and you don't even realize it? Where do and how often do we sit in a doctor's office and just take his word for it and go home feeling like something might be wrong? It feels like such a relevant conversation for us to be having right now. And I'm thrilled to have, played a part in it in this movie.
I love it. Sophia, I might be a little low-key in love with you now because I totally agree with you. And I love talking to you about this subject, but my time has come to a close.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm so low.
No. But it went well because you went on my same train where I was going. Thank you so much for your time. I just adore you and your projects. And thank you for your time again.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
Take care. Thank you, Zainab, for your time. This was another amazing role. I saw you in Farewell and More, and now I'm excited to see you in another amazing role. This film really explores some very serious things that women go through: agency over their body, reproductive issues, things that women are usually asked not to discuss publicly or very shameful or secret, and explores a lot of those themes. When you first became involved with this project, how did Grace Singleton speak to you, and what most intrigued you about playing her?
I had to admit the thing that really intrigued me about playing her, because first of all, I'd never been offered a character like that. So I found the script fascinating, and I found it fascinating that there's this person who is completely unlike me, and I was curious to play her because my sister, oddly enough, is an OBGYN. And she's very much her whole life is women's fertility. So I thought, oh, this is interesting. I get to explore a little bit of what my sister's life is, in terms of these women's issues, which I've never thought about because I've never myself personally wanted to have a child. I've never felt that pull, but I certainly have had friends who really wanted it so desperately and tried so many different avenues. And so I thought, okay, it'll be interesting to put myself in that space, that mind space of what does it mean to, be someone who could potentially offer someone who wanted this thing so desperately. How do you explore that power dynamic?
What is particularly interesting about Grace is we almost see two parts, two roles, two characters within a character. There's the Grace that we get to know when she's first introduced to us as a midwife, as someone who is helped to bring the concern, and then later on we see her take on a different persona and learn about her. Do you look at it as playing two roles within a role, because they seem to be very different from when we meet and from when we travel further into the story?
For me, I felt I was playing the one role. I think it was the one role, but being seen from different perspectives. So what someone might see is not necessarily what I, on this side is one thing, and the other side, you just sort of circle the character and see different facets of them. So for me, it always felt like the one person, but it depends who I'm talking to and what that person may see.
With Grace and with Grace's character and how she factors in, they're all part of the birthing story of our primary character and what she needs to undergo to bring life into the world. When you speak to your sister, as you mentioned, she's an OBGYN, and you look the type of role that Grace is, what do you think is the best fit for people? Is it modern medicine? Is it traditional old, the old method? If you looked at both, what do you think is the winning combination should you would have wanted to bring a child into the world?
For me, I think it's very much a mixture of the two. I come from a West African family. I'm Sierra Leonean. And I grew up in West Africa as a child. And there's always this mix of, what is known as conventional medicine, but it's always running hand in hand with traditional medicine, traditional midwife. And so I think that's the best of both worlds when you bring the two together. And because that's how it feels to me, that is pretty much what I grew up with, where we always had the auntie who came. Like, for instance, when a child is born, they literally, it will be an auntie who would come in and pierce that child's ears, at home. And it has to be done within 4 days because the nerves haven't fully formed. They say the child won't feel pain. I'm like, oh God, I don't know about that. But it's really interesting. I think it's the best of both worlds when you mix the two.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Yeah.
And lastly, as the story comes in angles to an end, we have sort of an explosive ending that will definitely leave people talking. If you had to describe the film in 3 words, how would you describe this film? Because I tried to think about how to discuss it without giving away the payoff. So how would you describe it?
Oh boy. It's a satirical, psychological drama.
Ooh, that is excellent. That is excellent. Well, I thank you for your time. This is a really, really interesting film. I'm so happy to see you in it because I enjoy your work greatly. And I thank you for your time.
Thank you so much. Thank you. My pleasure.
My pleasure too. Thank you. Take care.
You too.
Thank you, John, for your time today. I like your background art. I'm a fan of all art that is given to me. So I like that a lot. This is a fascinating movie. We have an occasion where it's a nervous time, but it's exciting time. And couples want to expand their family, but there's this real palpable tension and kind of sinister feel, even from the beginning of the film that resonates throughout the whole thing before anything is even revealed to you. What is the key to locking in the audience with that tension just right from the beginning that we see amongst all of our characters?
I think the key to the tension in this movie is the audience understanding the psychological kind of event that's happening in their lives. You understand a baby's supposed to be joyous, but then I've had, my wife and I have 2 babies and we had some fertility issues at the beginning. You understand when you get in there how kind of tense and complicated it is, and how many kind of daunting decisions you have to make that are going to have these massive echoes. Once you get impregnated, you imagine your child at 9, 10, 20, 30, you project so far into the future, and then every decision that is made or presented to you, or that is like, all the information is so fraught, because you don't want to make the wrong decision. And I think everyone kind of identifies with that. And I think that's the key to this kind of the feeling in this movie.
And layered upon that feeling is some very serious issues: women's agency over their own body and trusting your medical professionals to act in your best interest. There's a lot of wonderful themes that are very current that are being discussed, set with this kind of horror, scary background. When you were diving into getting a handle of how you wanted to work on the project and what was important to you to convey to the audience, what struck you most about this story that you kind of latched onto and built on from there?
I think what struck me the most is how the massive lack of support we give people, both psychologically, mental health and physical health. And that really was surprising to me. As a culture, we have that a lot, and then our relationship to healthcare is just, I don't get it. I don't understand it. And so that really surprised me. I don't really have an opinion on how I feel about the process. I think it's up to the individual, and I'm a real person. You should do what is good for you and be in a place that is comfortable for you. But the system doesn't care about that. And that's a real problem to me. That was the tension of just like, okay, so what does that involve? So we have a white woman and a white man who want this, and what's their relationship to healthcare? As a woman, as the father, and me as a father, and then how does that relate to people of color and all those things? Like, the history of feminism is a white history in many ways, and that is a key element to this movie. So I wanted to include all of those things, because if you don't include all of them, you actually do a disservice to the conversation. Because if you ignore certain aspects, then it belittles all those things. And to include it all actually gives us a plurality and an actual discussion to have, because healthcare and birth is really complicated and it's very vast. It encapsulates so much projection and hope, you know, while at the same time control. And, you know, so to me, the movie doesn't exist without including all of that.
Absolutely. And even layered, even more so on top of that, is at the core of it, something that women supposedly are supposed to do very naturally. Like you mentioned, within your own family, you've experienced these issues, and a lot of that natural thing that women are supposed to do is something that we don't prepare for. It's just something our bodies, and then we think about our body failing us. And it takes us to a whole nother mental space.
And it's not even just failing. It's also like, are you going to make the right choice? You know, like, are women, the choice of having kids or a career, you know, like, that's just nonsense. You should be able to do both. You know, like, I can do both. No one, I've said this before, no one ever asks me what's it like to have it all. But they always ask my wife that, who's also creative and writes and directs. Like, you know, we have kids. Allison, you have kids and a career. What's it like to have it all? You know, like, but they won't ask me that. But why not? I have kids. I have a career. I have a partner who supports me and I support her. That's how I have it all. You know, that's how I do it, because Allison is a beautiful, trusting, independent person who also will be giving to me when I need time, you know, and I'll do the same to her. So that's how you have it all. Support systems, right? Whether that be family, friends, community, what it should be in our world is like healthcare and systematic support, but we just don't have it. So to me, that's why it's a lot. There's a lot going on, and my hope was to not make this an issue movie, but make this like an entertaining kind of psychological movie, while all those things are also very present in the back of all of our minds.
Two things. That is brilliant. That's true. Men are never asked that. And secondly, yes, I'm glad you said that. It didn't seem like an issue movie. I didn't feel like I was being beat over the head. With the story. It was very, very entertaining how all these themes were interwoven, and I enjoyed it greatly. Thank you for your time, John.
Oh, thank you very much.
Movie, terrific cast, and I appreciate you talking to me.
Yes, thank you. See ya.
Better shake your booties for black girl nerves. Better shake your booties for black girl nerves.